change, but this is the future of the Republican Party, and I'm Chad Livengood, politics editor and columnist of the Detroit News. And I'm joined by State Senator Jim Runestad, who is the chairman of the Michigan Republican Party, and running just a tad bit late, but he'll be here, is Representative Brian Postumus, Republican from Kent County and the majority floor leader. And so he'll just join us in progress as we get the discussion going. Jim, first of all, having a good conference?
Very good. It's wonderful that the weather played ball with us. I thought we were going to get low 50s and tons of rain, and so it's been nice to be able to get around and have a lot of activity and meet a lot of people.
All right, and I'm glad that you also wore a tie. So I was like a little nervous if I wore a tie this morning, I'd be out of place. So I want to start off. There is some breaking news this morning. Well, the Detroit News last week, we broke the story originally that the DeVos family is setting up a new Republican organization that's going to be. It looks like going to be the ground game operation for electing Republicans to the state house and the state senate, and eventually probably statewide offices as well. And it's going to be led by Ronna Romney McDaniel. Many of you might know her, former chair of the Michigan Republican Party, went on to become the chair of the RNC for several years, and still lives in Northville. And we also reported that Shane Hernandez, a former state rep who's been with the Associated Builders and Contractors, he's going to be joining this as well. It looks like the DeVos family is putting some of the seed money into it, but there's a story this morning in the Wall Street Journal kind of laying it all out with Ronna talking about what it's going to be and how it's going to operate. Some people, Jim, have said, this looks like an alternative to the Michigan Republican Party. What do you know about this, or what have they told you so far?
Well, I've talked to Ronna Romney McDaniel and Shane Hernandez in the last couple of days, and also with Dick DeVos, and it's hearsay that there's going to be an entity like this to replace the Michigan Republican Party. The Michigan Republican Party is on its way to, I think, be bigger and better than it's ever been before, and there is going to be no issues between these two entities, the DeVos's new organization and state party, in terms of the mission of electing Republicans. So I think it's going to be a different effort in some respects than what we're going to be doing, but in the mission, it's going to be identical in terms of getting Republicans elected this cycle.
All right, we're joined in progress here by Representative Brian Postumus.
All right. Thank you. Good to see you. Sorry about that.
Yeah. We were just talking about the breaking news this morning that the DeVos family is getting behind this new entity, this new Republican entity that will be led by Ronna McDaniel and Shane Hernandez, that will have what she describes today in the Journal as a permanent infrastructure. That instead of like ramping up, in an election cycle and hiring operatives and field workers and whatnot, that this sounds like they're going to try to have a continuous operation. And something that Ronna said here kind of struck me. We need to make Michigan reliably red. We need to become a state like Ohio. I want to ask you, Representative, is that possible? I mean, given you're in the House and you know how the battle lines are drawn, particularly with the districts, and how narrow, 4,000 or 5,000 votes can basically now decide 3 or 4 state House seats and the majority. Can the party turn Michigan into an Ohio, reliably Republican territory?
Absolutely. I mean, look, if you look at just Ohio, the saying 12 years ago was as Ohio goes, so goes the nation, right? It was that purple of a state. If you look at Florida, during Governor DeSantis's first run for governor, he barely won, and Florida was a purple state at that point. And over the next 6 years, he turned that a very deep red state. That can happen in Michigan too, but it can't happen without a concerted effort. That's why I'm excited that Chair Runstead is taking the lead, and from the party standpoint, because he understands that we have to look at it from a future standpoint, and what can we do to build a coalition in Michigan that can win in the future.
Senator, what is it going to take to accomplish that? How do you get back to winning statewide elections, which Republicans have struggled with in several cycles now?
One of the things you have to do is reach out to non-traditional voters. I was able to do that as a state senator. I had the most diverse Senate district in the state of Michigan, so I started reaching out to a lot of different ethnic communities. I was named the Indian Legislator of the Year for the Indian community when they came into Lansing for their annual event. And that's just an example of what you can do if you're having that kind of outreach. Currently, the state party does not have that bandwidth, so I was talking to Shane Hernandez yesterday, and they have an ability to do some of these things that I cannot do to outreach to some of these non-traditional communities that we need if we're going to get this kind of a statewide red wave. And in order to do that, we've got to keep messaging that we have a different policy program than the Democrats. I was just reading some of the polls, the Quinnipiac, I can't remember if I pronounced that right, going back to 2008, the Democrats are polling the lowest they have ever polled. I saw another poll, Democrats' negatives were 27, Republicans were 11. So if they're continuing with these policies that are very, very unpopular that was shown in the last election, I think we're going to do very, very well this cycle. And if that continues to be the case and we're outreaching to the non-traditional voters for the Republican Party, we can make the state red.
Yeah, Representative Postumus, you represent kind of rings of bedroom communities around Grand Rapids. Kent County has been trending blue for several cycles. Grand Rapids obviously is a big part of that, but it has spread out into the suburbs, and in Oakland County has become pretty reliably Democrat, with the Democratic County Commission, Democratic County Executive, who succeeded the late Brooks Patterson and sort of broke up the Brooks Republican juggernaut. How do you get back to winning in the suburbs? What do you think the strategy is there to appeals?
I would push back a little bit on Kent County trending blue. I mean, look, all 5 countywide elected officials are Republican. My sister's a countywide elected official, and she won by, I don't know, 45,000 votes in Kent County. And so the question is, what are we as a party doing to appeal to the different sections of the conservative base, as well as the independent voter? And I think if we start focusing on that in the general election, that we'll be fine in Kent County. Very similar down in Oakland County. I mean, how many millions of dollars have the Democrats spent trying to take out Mark Tisdale? Mark Tisdale's a phenomenal legislator, and I don't care how much money anybody throws at him. Yep. He will not lose Rochester and Rochester Hills. He just won't. He represents and fits that district extremely well. And so, one of the challenges with building a big tent party, which is what we are aspiring to do with the Republican Party, is there are going to be different demographics within that party. I would get my butt kicked in Rochester Hills, right? I'm a redneck from West Michigan. Mark Tisdale would probably he could lose in some of the Republican areas. Like he would have a harder time to getting elected countywide in Kent County because he just doesn't fit that area. So we have to make sure that we are looking at who are the candidates that can best represent either that district or that county or that state as a whole.
So it's very candidate specific to the local demographic, local economy, things of local interest.
Right.
I mean, we are a little tribal in this state,
yes.
is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because your downriver seats are a whole different territory.
Oh yeah, I don't think I could win in Jamie Thompson's district. Yeah. Like Jamie Thompson certainly can. That's a great example as well.
Yeah. What about statewide elections? You haven't won a U.S. Senate seat since Spence Abraham in 1994. haven't won governors, and I mean, the governor does seem to go from one party to the next, but haven't won Secretary of State, Attorney General in a few cycles. How do you get back to trying? What do you think the message is, Senator, what do you think is crucial for the next nominee to win those seats?
To basically do the same kind of outreach that President Trump has done here in Michigan. I mean, he's won Michigan twice. And how long has it been since we've had a presidential candidate who win Michigan? It goes all the way back decades and decades. So a lot of the same outreach has got to be done by the senatorial candidate to get into these non-traditional areas. You talked about Oakland County. Yes, it's been trending to the Democrat side over the last number of years. But what's happened is a lot of individuals are moving out of Wayne County into Oakland County. It's what Brooks Patterson complained about. He said they come here because they love Oakland County and it's so well governed, but they bring that same voting pattern. That has been happening, but what's happening also is now Wayne County is trending more Republican. I believe it was either number 1 or 2 biggest flip of a county in the nation going towards the Republican side. The numbers shifted that much in Wayne County. So reaching out to these disaffected voters that are unhappy with the direction of the state of Michigan, unhappy with the Democrat policies, reaching out more to the working class people. I think that what we're seeing here nationally is the Democrats are moving into the party of the wealthy, the party of the billionaires. They were talking about the billionaires. I think it was 57, or maybe no, it was 83 billionaires for Kamala Harris and 53 for Trump. So they're talking about who the billionaires are, overwhelmingly on the Democrat side. I believe that the Republican messaging is now the working class, the people who really, really are out there struggling. There's a huge ability to message out to them in the Senate race and make an impact here in Michigan.
Two things. Well, Wayne County, didn't the trends of Wayne County, the disaffected voter, doing better with African Americans, doing better with white, non-college educated women, and downriver, and more blue collar voters, wasn't that directly a result of having Donald Trump at the top of the ticket?
It certainly had a huge impact, but it's upon us to get out there and message to these people, to outreach. When I outreach to the Indian community, when I found out I had 6 years ago a substantial Indian community, I contacted the 3 liaisons for the Indian community. 2 of them, the numbers were disconnected. The other guy said, I haven't lived in Michigan in 10 years. So that's an example of what was not being done. So we are outreaching to these communities like never before. I'm going to be going out and meeting I've got meetings already set up. I'm going to be going out into Dearborn. I'm going to be going to ethnic communities all over the state of Michigan. So we're going to try to make sure that this idea that you show up at election time is not going to be the case. And I think it's what this new entity is about, that we're not going to be showing up at election time. It's going to be an ongoing outreach through the entire election cycle after cycle.
In 24, there was Donald Trump won the state by about above Mike Rogers by I think about 87,000 votes, if I remember correctly here. And we heard from a lot of people, just election officials, and you could also see it. The ballot drop off, it was like no other. People going in to vote for president and then putting the ballot in and not voting for anything else. I mean, if you look at maybe why Mike Rogers lost, that might have been one of the reasons. Again, how do Republicans win in 2026 without Donald Trump on the ballot?
It's going to be incumbent upon me to get out there and talk to conservative groups around the state of Michigan that maybe there's something that you don't like about who our nominee is going to be for the Senate position, but do you want somebody who's 90%, on your side, or do you want somebody 100% in opposition? It goes back to that old conundrum. The people want a litmus test of perfection before they're going to vote for a candidate, and we cannot afford to have that. We need somebody that's going to be 80, 90% on our side on these issues, and that's something I'm going to take as my responsibility to make sure I get that message out there.
Representative, I mean, the House Republicans benefited from Trump on the ballot.
Absolutely.
So what's your game plan without Trump?
So, well, first of all, let me point out something that a lot of people don't realize. When we were doing the recount for Representative Frisbee, we would go through all of the ballots, right? And the number of people that voted at the top of the ticket that didn't make it anywhere else was like only about half of the people that voted at the top of the ticket on the Republican side voted all the way down ballot. Counter that with the Democrat side, and it was almost 100%. And so it's clear that I mean, when you have almost 100,000 people turn out to vote for one person on the ballot and then not continue on, you have a problem. And so that was actually one of the reasons. While I wholeheartedly believe it's the right policy and really good policy, from a political standpoint, that was one of the reasons for me to launch the ballot initiative for only citizen voting, because I wholeheartedly believe that out of those 100,000 people that show up when Trump's on the ballot and only when Trump's on the ballot, I believe that is one of the issues that would potentially turn that group of voter out to the polls one more time. And then at that point, then it's our responsibility as Republicans to articulate the conservative message in a manner that resonates well enough to them that it would get them to come back and also vote down ballot.
Speak to a little bit about your proposal and what the state of it is. I mean, how do you intend to get this thing on the ballot?
That's a great question. I intend to get it on the ballot by collecting 650,000 signatures in the span of 6 months. We're still
not an easy thing to do.
It is not an easy task. It takes a lot of organization. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of money. So we're in the process of continuing to raise a little bit more money to make sure that our infrastructure is built out properly before we even start to collect signatures. That way we don't run into the end of the 6-month window and fall short. So
what would it do?
It would ensure that only U.S. citizens could vote in our elections by requiring proof of citizenship when registering to vote and photo ID when casting your ballot.
And what are you trying to? I mean, just an obvious question. What process right now exists that you think is flawed that doesn't weed out non-Americans?
So in Michigan, it's illegal to vote in our elections as a non-citizen. Absolutely, that's true. That's 100% true. But the only thing preventing it from happening is a checkbox. That if I'm a non-citizen and I want to vote in our election, all I have to do is check a box and lie on the form. And unfortunately, we know for a fact that's happening in Michigan. That's not up for debate anymore. We know for a fact that is happening. And so my thought process is, well, it shouldn't be. Only U.S. citizens should be voting in our elections.
Okay. Senator Runstad, Michigan Republican Party question. How much debt does the Michigan GOP currently have right now?
Well, we were at about 800,000, but as of today, I've raised 500,000. So we're vanquishing that debt. And I think by year's end, we're going to have most of that down. And into next year, at the end of this term, we certainly will have no debt. I've already made a commitment to that and having a big fund balance at the end of my term. So it's something that does happen with parties. There's always a push by candidates at the tail end of an election that, hey, if you just give me another 100,000, you can put me over the line to victory. And that's something I'm committed to not doing through my term is we're going to raise the money, we're going to spend the money, but whether it's me or someone else, I'm not going to leave debt for the next person. So we're working our way through that. I've reached out to all of the old donors that in the past had been very, very generous to the party, and they've all come back. Every one of them that I've met with has donated money to the party. So we're vanquishing that debt, and like I said, when I get done, there will be no debt.
One of the internal gripes within the Republican Party about candidates for Attorney General, Secretary of State, and the statewide education boards is that they have to be nominated at a state convention. And it's basically, you're a precinct delegate, you go to a county convention, you get elected to become a delegate at the state convention. And basically a nexus of 2,000 people get to decide who's the nominee for Attorney General. And the complaint internally and among activists and also among people that might want to run is that you have to be pretty far to the right to win at that state convention. And then you end up with nominees like Christina Karamo who don't do very well and don't even accept the results of the election too. And what would you ever support just getting rid of the state convention system and going to a primary for Attorney General and Secretary of State?
I think that the base of the party likes the idea of being able to have input in these statewide positions. But part of that, I think, is making sure the person is electable. I won almost the entire, 51% of the ballot in the first ballot in my race. And I went around and talked to delegates all over the state of Michigan in order to get that kind of an impact. And I believe that if I talk to the delegates about the electability, I can't endorse in a primary or anything like that, but certainly we have to have somebody that's electable. I can say that, and think about that when you're making your decision. We don't want to have somebody that's unelectable. We want to have somebody that's got good conservative values, but is also electable, and try to make sure they understand that it's so critical. The Secretary of State, the base, if they don't understand what happened in this last number of years with Joycelyn Benson as Secretary of State and Dana Nessel as the Attorney General, if they don't understand the impact that has on the state of Michigan, then we have a problem. So we have to make sure we recruit good candidates and that we get somebody who's electable.
Representative, same question. Would you keep the convention system or go to a primary?
I'd be open to a primary, but I do understand and know the value of having the input from the grassroots activists at conventions. So that's something that I think the party as a whole should decide, and then push it to the elected officials to legislate the process in order to do that. So I'd be interested to see how that would turn out.
What about the statewide education boards, the governing boards of U of M, Wayne State, MSU, and of course the State Board of Education? Either you have any feelings about, should we continue to have elected officials in these positions, or should they be appointees of the governor like the rest of the university boards?
I personally like the system of selecting them at the convention. They have a lot more time to get out there and meet the delegates over the course of months. My good friend Sonny Reddy was elected to the Board of Governors at Wayne State, and everybody said he was absolutely everywhere. So he was able to go out and message what his philosophy was as the Board of Governors to 7,500 delegates who are elected all over the state of Michigan, and get that message out there. And maybe it would have cost them, I don't know what would have been the dynamic if you had to go to a governor and try to get that anointing from a governor. But I thought the system, in particular for these regions, works pretty good.
Okay. One thing I want to ask, with sort of an economics or policy question. The Republican Party was for decades the party of free trade, and that has changed with this second, well, not just the second term, but with Donald Trump, with his tariff policy and going after allies like Canada and Mexico in trade. And yet the polling that the Detroit Chamber just commissioned shows that a majority of voters think tariffs are going to be bad for Michigan in the long run. How are you going to message this and go out and explain and defend tariffs in the next election?
So I think it's less about explaining and defending tariffs. So what I would say is, look, so I I still am a free market Republican, right? That's my view. That's my position. But what I would say is that anybody we have all these people pontificating and prognosticating about what's going to happen, right? And it's all doom and gloom. And we also have the history of Smoot-Hawley and different tariff policies that have been implemented over the last 7,500 years. But the reality is that there's never been a time in history where a tariff policy has been implemented such that today, where the interconnectivity of our entire country is as dense as it is today. Not to mention the fact that we have no idea what the long-term policy is actually going to be, right? I think there's one person that knows that, President Trump. Yeah. We have no idea what is the implications going to be on our income taxes nationally. We don't know. Maybe it's a big thing. Is it going to end up just being focused on China and China only, or is it going to be 40% across the board? We don't know where we're going to end up. So I think all of the people pontificating about what they say is going to happen, even the Harvard-educated economists, truly just don't know. And so what it's going to come down to is 8 months from now, where is the economy at? If the economy is in a good place here in Michigan, then we can have that conversation going into the election, and I think Republicans are going to be in a really good spot. If the economy falls through the floor in 8 months, it's going to be a lot more difficult for us to have that conversation.
I'd like to chime in on that as well, that sure, I believe in free trade when you can make it happen, but you also have to have fair trade. And there's so many of these countries that have 100% tariffs on our products. I was talking to one of the big three, I can't remember which one it was, and they were telling about just an example of one of the countries that say the lights on the car have to be a certain kind of red. And if it's a little tint off, it's illegal, and you can't sell that car because the tint on the the covering over the lights has to be the right kind of tint red. They do this specifically to make all the cars illegal, not just a tariff, but you can't even sell the car there. So they're doing these things that are making it impossible for us to be competitive at all. So what the president's trying to do is make sure that we have some reciprocity, some fairness in our trade. And a lot of the angst, I think, by the public is the media's reporting on the stock market. It's up, it's down, it's crashing. Oh, my gosh. The stock market whipsaws on rumors. It has nothing to do with what's happening with the economy, which is more like turning an aircraft carrier. It doesn't whip like a canoe, like so much of the media presents. It is something that takes a long time. So these day-by-day decisions where the president's saying, we're going to do this, and we're pulling back, he's a negotiator. He's making deals out there. He's bringing back trillions in deals to the United States. So this is going to be something, in my view, is going to be very, very effective over time, but we just have to give it some time as he's negotiating these deals internationally.
But hasn't the president, I mean, he's retreated on tariffs.
What wisely? I mean, you don't say, I'm going to do this, and then there's some modification that he's got a short period of time in the 100 days to make an impact. Anyone who knows, right, when you're president, you get that first 100 days. Yes, you're a honeymoon. You got to make stuff happen. Are you going to do everything perfectly when you got that 100-day time limit? No, you're not going to do it perfectly. And now he's making decisions where I just talked with Ford yesterday, and they said, we're in communication with him on some of these issues that are an issue, and he's made changes for the automotive industry. So it's not like I made a decision and I'm not going to reverse that decision because I'm Trump. That would not make sense. He's modifying that as he's getting pushback in these policy changes to make sure that it's going to be implemented, work over a matter of time and not instantaneously.
Can I jump in on that real quick? You know, one of the biggest problems with politicians is they tend to not want to admit when either they're wrong or change a direction, and for whatever reason, arrogance, or they don't know how to justify changing their direction, changing their action, or they feel pressure when by questioned by the media or whatever, like, you're changing your mind. You know, whether or not he's changing his mind, I don't know whether that's a retreat or just an adjustment to an initial decision. But the point is that we should look at that as a good thing, right? When the President of the United States makes a decision to do something, reads the results of that decision and decides to make the next decision that may be viewed as retreating, that is actually a good sign. That's a good thing. So I just want to make sure to point that out.
I mean, do you think ultimately, I mean, we can just pick on General Motors for a second here, or I will at least. General Motors is making like almost 200,000 units in South Korea and China. These are the Chevy Trax, all the Buicks except for the Enclave. It's built in Lansing Township or Delta Township. Are all Buicks besides that one. Like 86% of Buicks are assembled in South Korea or China. There's a recognition within the auto industry that, hey, we want $14,000 profit sharing checks like they gave to UAW members this year. Got to build a certain number of units overseas for the cheaper labor. I mean, how is the president going to undo that?
Well, he's working on it with these negotiations with the tariffs. I remember back when Ross Perot ran for president, and he said, with NAFTA and GATT, what we're going to see is a gigantic sucking sound of manufacturing going to Mexico and the rest of the third world, where you can just pay slave labor, and that's what's going to happen with these trade agreements, and that is exactly what happened. Millions of jobs. And so what the president's trying to do is onshore these back to the United States. And again, it's frustrating. The media presents these negotiations like you stroke a pen and then all this stuff happens instantaneously. There are all these countries he's negotiating with, all these different trade deals, trying to get this manufacturing back to the United States, and in most cases, very, very successfully from what I'm hearing, and you just don't hear about that. You hear this, the market's up, it's down, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. Well, the market is a day, but if you know anything about it, I mean, you could hear the slightest rumor of this or that and whipsaws the market around. What he's trying to do is make these long-term agreements that are going to start getting that manufacturing here to the United States.
But how is he going to get assembly plants back to Michigan?
He's already making agreements. I think it was General Motors announced in Detroit. I can't remember.
It's engine plant investments.
Yeah. I mean, that's an example.
That's next generation engine. That's your typical retooling announcement.
But that's the kind of thing that they could move somewhere else. I mean, if the big three and the foreign automakers are all understanding that there's going to be a price to pay, before it was a benefit for them to leave, there's going to be a price to pay if they're leaving or if they're not onshoring here. So it's going to take time, but if we don't do something, we're not going to have any manufacturing here in the United States.
Okay.
Look, I would add that like this is a long-term thing. To the chairman's point, this isn't something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens maybe even in 2 or 3 years. This is a 5 to 10 year scenario. And that's not to say that we won't see any results short term or in the next year or 2, 3 years. What I would suggest is that I wholeheartedly believe. Now I haven't had conversations with the president on this. You as well as anybody knows that I've been critical at times of the president as well. But I fundamentally believe that what President Trump is trying to do is lay a foundation for the next 50 years of our country. You can't lay a 50-year foundation and expect results in the next year. And so now I think we will see some, but that's not what I don't believe that's what the president is concerned about. I believe the president is concerned about what does our country look like 25, 30, 40 years from now.
I turn to state, house, and Senate matters. Right now, this is budget season typically in the Capitol. The Senate has passed its budget. The Speaker says the House is preparing at least a school aid budget soon. Representative, how are you going to thread the needle with getting votes on these budgets that, particularly on a roads deal, that might have to involve new revenue? How are you going to negotiate that with, Senator Sarah Anthony, Chair of the Appropriations Committee, whom the Speaker has called, quote, the ultimate Lansing insider? How are you going to do that with this sort of name calling that he's engaged in right now?
Well, I have a good relationship with Chairwoman Anthony, so we get along fine. Now, what I will say is the short answer to that question is I don't know. right? Like House Republicans, we are relatively dug in on the fact that the government has plenty of money and we don't need to increase any money, let alone for roads, right? We came up with a $3.1 billion roads plan. It doesn't increase taxes, doesn't increase fees. It uses existing money, takes it away from corporate subsidies for the most part, right? And so I know the Senate Democrats are hell-bent on growing government. I think the budget that you mentioned that they passed out of the Senate was $1 billion budget, or I'm sorry, $1 billion deficit, which correct me if I'm wrong, but is unconstitutional. And I think it was like what, 87.5 billion if you include what they want to do for roads, an increase from just under 80 billion, I believe, something like that. Or
the Senate Fiscal Agency said that was incorrect.
What was that?
Your resolution.
Oh, okay. Well,
They said it was
Senate analysis.
533 million instead of $1 billion, so it still was not, even in reconciliation, it was still way over the constitutional limit.
Right, yeah, and the Senate analysis itself said it was accurate, right? So the reality, here's the deal. The point is still the same. The Democrats are dug in on growing government and increasing revenue to the state of Michigan, and the House Republicans are set on holding government accountable and saying, look, the government's big enough, the government gets enough money, $30 billion growth under Governor Whitmer is enough. We can just stay right there for a minute and let that expansion sink in and stay there. So we'll see where we end up.
Well, just to be clear, in that $3 billion plan, one of the corporate subsidies you want to take away is the tax incentives that subsidize jobs at the big three.
Yep. I mean, look,
their tax bill will go up.
When you're looking at eight to 10 of the biggest, most well-connected companies in the state of Michigan getting hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars, I think that's okay. And when you say their tax bill will go up, yes, because we are no longer going to be subsidizing them to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So they would have to pay that tax rather than the taxpayers paying that tax for them. I'm good with that. I'll make that argument all day long to the taxpayer of Michigan that the largest companies in the state of Michigan, we should not be subsidizing anymore. We should fix our roads instead. That would be a really good poll question. Like just do a focus group and say, should our state give hundreds of millions of dollars to the biggest, wealthiest corporations in our state, or should our state use that money to fix the roads? I would love to see that. And actually, I'm really excited that the Democrats oppose us on this because they just keep getting on the wrong side of these issues, right? Like, that is a no-brainer. Put the money in the roads, not in mega corporations. Only U.S. citizens vote. We shouldn't let non-citizens vote in our elections. Only women should play in women's sports, not men. Like, the fact that the Democrats are jumping headfirst into these 80-20 issues on the wrong side I don't understand it.
You think you can campaign on corporate subsidies or against them?
Absolutely.
And that will help you win downriver?
I think that'd help, yeah. I genuinely, even the people downriver, I believe would agree by a large margin that we should spend hundreds of millions of dollars on roads instead of giving it to the wealthy corporate subsidies, or do it rather than handing out subsidies to the largest corporations in the country.
Senator, a little question that's like kind of one of my pet issues. Do you think Act 51 needs to change? And you represent a lot of townships that don't get direct money for roads. They rely on the county, but they are cities-like size townships. Both of you do, actually. I mean, represent some pretty large charter townships. Do you think Act 51, the formula that distributes road funding for everybody that may not know that, do you think that needs to change?
I've been working on it for 11 years. Just so you know, it was passed in 1951, so you can tell how old this bill is, that it's the allocation for all the road funding dollars all over the state of Michigan. And it's basically a per mile of road funding. So when you get up here into the northern area, you see a lot of very pristine roads. My wife and I come and drive around northern Michigan a lot in the summer. We're like, wow, what pristine roads, because they're paying per mile of road. when you get down in Oakland County, Wayne County, for those of you who haven't been in there, the roads are crumbling, dust, potholes all over the place, because you have hundreds of thousands of cars and big trucks, and you get the same funding for up here, where you got once in a blue moon of cars going by, and there you have hundreds of thousands of cars going over the roads. And that really should be fixed, because I was just talking to some of the major manufacturers yesterday about some of the issues here in Michigan, and there's energy cost issues, there's talent. We're always at the very bottom of reading, and if you don't learn to read young, your life is going to be very, very difficult. They don't want to come where there's no talent, and if your students can't read, there's no talent. On top of that, they fly into like the Waterford International Airport, which has had every CEO of every major company's flown in there, and they drive out in their cars, go, who would live in this craterscape roads? You drive into Ohio from the Detroit area, and you get across the border, and you got great roads. So it's PA 51 is a huge part of that. Unfortunately, we can't get the majority of the legislators to agree, because I think even the governors would agree this has got to be rectified. So I don't know what the solution is there, other than we're going to have to raise more money for roads and try to get those dollars into where it really needs to be put, because it's a disaster right now.
Some of your colleagues up here in northern Michigan are kind of defensive of their
They love their
money.
pristine roads. These are great. We want to just keep the system. But if you look at it from a statewide aspect, they're not flying, the CEOs are not flying into the Pelton Airport. They're flying into Metro. They're flying into Bishop. They're flying into the Waterford International Airport. And they're driving out in their cars and going, my God, look at this moonscape. Like, if you haven't been there, there's some of them, you literally are going like this in Oakland County. It's just, I filmed me driving where the car's going like this and said, look at these roads we have in Oakland County. And a lot of that has to do with PA 51.
Well, we've got, how long are we on till? 15 more minutes? Okay, we got time for questions here. If you got questions in the audience for these two gentlemen? Yeah, right here, Lena Epstein.
Oh, good morning.
He's got a microphone for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning. It's so delightful to be to witness this panel today. I'm Lena Epstein, also a conservative activist in the state. Thank you for bringing a measured message to this chamber and to this conference. For those of us in the audience that really believe in the Republican Party, what is the best thing that we can do right now while we're here to tactically and tangibly expand the base of support within our party, please? And if I could just say a moment, the base of this party absolutely adores Jim Runstead. He had a very decisive and unapologetic victory earlier this year. And I'm very honored to be your friend, and I wish you every success ahead. Thank you. Would you answer the question, though? Because I think there are people here that want to do good while we're here for the party and don't really know quite what to do. Thank you both.
Well, thank you. There's a lot I would say. I don't know what I'm prohibited from saying in this format, but certainly joining the party, we are on a growth spurt. We have changed everything that was done in the past in terms of the email system, the domain system, the website. We're changing absolutely everything from what it was before into a completely new party. And so there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of impassioned people coming forward. We need a lot of people that have skill sets. We're at the point in our situation right now where we need volunteers because we don't have the employees we would want to have to build everything out. We will get there, but all of those things would be great for anyone to get involved. But thank you for the comments.
Good morning. I'm John Madden with American Axle. Definitely a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to hear everything that you've outlined in terms of the direction that you have envisioned for the Republican Party here in Michigan. Question I have for you. You know, one of the big challenges we have is how to figure out how to grow the pie here in Michigan. And I understood that at one time, Brian, that you were working on a 10-year economic development plan. That would be tremendously helpful, right, for all the industries that call Michigan home, and would be interested in hearing a little bit about where things stand with regard to that and what your vision is for that economic development plan going forward.
So that's a great question, and actually, we could sit here talking for literally the entire hour on that question. So this is going to be a wholly lacking answer, so I apologize for that. But let me start by saying it comes down to the overall, and this is a new answer to this, so bear with me. We have to be looking at the overall paradigm of the individuals that are creating the policies for our state. And they have to have a growth mindset with vision for what can we look for 10 years down the road. It can't be about political maneuvering constantly. It just can't. Look, I grew up in politics, right? I'm as political as they come, but I legislate based on policy, not on politics. And I've always believed that good policy makes for good politics. But the challenges that are facing our state aren't these basic, simple, easy fixes. It's okay. We don't have the talent. We don't have the education. So, like, where are we at in our education system? Mississippi has a better education system than the state of Michigan does. Mississippi does. They're one of the poorest states in the country historically, and also historically have done worse on the education scale. They're in a better place than Michigan is when it comes to education. When you're lacking in education in that standpoint, it doesn't matter what else you do, you're not going to be able to grow your state. And so we have to be working on that. What about skilled trades? All right, well, if we can figure out the skilled trades area, then we can attract people into that so we can actually get affordable housing. The problem is we have too many politicians that don't have a growth mindset for a long-term vision of the state of Michigan, and too focused on all of these different dynamics that aren't going to move the needle on these big 50,000-foot issues. If we don't address the 50,000-foot issues, it doesn't matter what we do at the nitty-gritty level, unfortunately. I'm a little frustrated, if you can't tell.
Is there a plan coming together? Is there a 10-year plan coming together? Is that still?
Oh, I am working on that, again, it's like, all right, how do we bring in? So part of it is actually bringing in cryptocurrency, because I believe that's going to be a 20 years from now, I believe it's going to be the foundation of the financial industry in Michigan. But it brings in the financial areas, it brings in the education areas, it brings in the skilled trades areas, which also brings in housing. But it's less of a policy package, because I know I'll never get the governor to sign 30 bills on all of these, but more of a general vision for the future of Michigan.
But to the extent that there is a plan that you're expecting is going to be developed, we'd like to have input. We'd like to work with you to provide at least our perspective on things that we think can help grow the pie, can help deliver economic benefits, can also deliver important community benefits.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
You and I talked last night, and you had a lot of good suggestions, and I'm all ears. I attended the National Association of State Legislators in Indianapolis 2 years ago, and Michigan was the national laughingstock. We have among the lowest test scores for early literacy in the nation. We spend some of the highest dollar amounts, and the panel of experts, there's 400 legislators from around the country. The panel said one state is resistant. One state will not implement science of reading, which is what took Mississippi from the bottom to the middle, and they're going to go to the top. All the other states represented there are all moving in that direction. Michigan was the only state, but they wouldn't say the state's name, because we were one of the the dues-paying members, but I was smiling and went up and said, it's Michigan. Yeah, that was Michigan. I tried to get the panelists to come to Michigan, and they were shot down by the education department. They wouldn't even meet with them. So this is the kind of stuff that we have to turn around, becoming the only state in the nation that reversed right to work, as though that's going to be helpful in the state of Michigan. We have high energy costs. We have weather issues. We need to reverse so much that's been done in the last number of years to become a business-friendly state, to start getting businesses to come here. We're having an outflow still of people leaving Michigan. Year after year, we're one of the top states of people leaving the state of Michigan. If we don't reverse that, we're going to have the elderly, young people, dependent. The productive people are going to Florida. They're going to Indiana. We've got to reverse that and make Michigan business friendly, or we're going to be a very, very poor dependent state.
How do you intend to reverse the weather issues?
That's something you just have to deal with. I mean, we have this, it's one of the most, I've traveled all over the Midwest. There's no doubt in my mind Michigan's the most beautiful. So, yeah, we don't have the best weather, but the natural beauty is unparalleled.
I mean, one of the roads issues we have is up here they have a freeze and then a slow thaw. In southeast Michigan, we have freeze and thaw cycle and all the time for like 2 months. So that's one of the reasons our roads are rough.
Cincinnati doesn't. I mean, Toledo doesn't have these same issues. You go from, you drive. If anyone hasn't driven from Michigan into Ohio, is like the weather turns perfect as soon as you cross the border because the roads are pristine. It isn't that there's a gigantic climate difference between these two states. It is it's the funding.
I mean, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but they are spending more per capita on roads. They are just they're taking care of their infrastructure. So we have other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So pleased to hear your commitment to working families. And I know Michigan has one of the highest rates of concentrated poverty in the country. And I just saw an article this morning about the rising number of homeless children in our state, which is pretty devastating. And so I'm just curious what your party's plans are to support children in poverty and give them an opportunity for the American dream. Thank you.
You want to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start and then jump in if you have additional. So I think I look at it from two standpoints. Number one is what directly can we do as a state, right? I am a Republican. I believe that there should be safety nets for purposes like that, for homeless, especially homeless children. What can we do to expand that area? I think that helping with homeless is one of them. But what I would also say is we have to have an economically growing state. If you have an economically growing state, then necessarily that reduces poverty around our entire state. And if we are focusing on pro-growth policies in Michigan, then we'll be in a better position to do that, to address that issue, rather than policies that don't grow our state. That's the way that I look at it. I haven't. What I will say is I haven't personally been working directly on any specific legislation that deals in that issue. So I can't. I'm not familiar with specific policies, but that's my standpoint.
Let me drill down here on a question. The most recent analysis of the president's tax bill, one big beautiful bill, OBB. It says that the changes to Medicaid would cost Michigan a little under $2 billion a year, and then the changes to the SNAP food stamps program would also cost the state another $750 million. That's partly it's a little complicated how they got to that, but what state officials say is we're going to have to essentially lower the food stamp payments or benefits, and that there will be hundreds of thousands of people that will be taken off of Medicaid in order to, because the state doesn't have that.
I mean, look, I'm more concerned about the direct impact on Medicaid that the Senate budget's going to have, that we know it's going to have. 60,000 people are going to lose Medicaid coverage based on the Senate budget, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about proposed federal ideas that some survey says this may or may not happen. Let's focus on the Senate budget that we know that has come out that is going to remove 60,000 people on Medicaid. Let's focus on that if we're going to be talking about Medicaid.
And these numbers need to be parsed out. There's 1.4 million people here illegally on Medicaid. Not one person should be collecting that benefit. The system's going bust. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, if we don't do something, the system's going to be bust. All I hear is the Democrats say we need to spend more. We need more dependency, more people that are on this budget. The numbers that have come out is there's almost 7 million adult males that are not working. There's millions of people who are collecting Medicaid who are able-bodied with no dependents. And they're saying, listen, you have to work 80 hours a week or go to school or do community service. 80 hours, I'm sorry, a month. A month. And when I talk to people like that are working their rear ends off out there and you say you get free Medicaid and you don't have to do anything, that's the Democrats' policy? No. Getting these males primarily who are sitting at home playing video games, getting them incentivized to go out and work is going to be good for them and it'll be good for the system. And all you hear is this complaint, oh my gosh, we can't have people do community service or go to school or work. They should just be able to stay home and collect the benefit. That is not going to be a selling point to the people who are out there working their rear ends off right now for paying their own health care costs.
To your point, a little piece of data, we have a 48% workforce participation rate among working age adults. It's one of the lowest in the Great Lakes.
The United States is the working age male, the workforce participation has been collapsing year over year. The numbers are just atrocious. And not only does that mean, they're saying there's twice as many jobs as people sitting at home who are unwilling to work. And it's not only devastating for the country, it's devastating for them. You can imagine if you have a kid sitting at home and they don't work year after year after year, the likelihood they're going to have a happy, successful life is almost zero. So it's good for them and it's good for the nation.
Question right here.
One last question. Well, no pressure to make it too good. My name is Nikhil Patel. I am my day job treasurer for the city of Detroit. We are launching a crypto product. Even though we may have differing feelings on where it goes in 20 years, there's still potential. My question is this: generally speaking, I agree with the sentiment that there needs to be an opportunity to be more conscious about what the Social Security funding will be, what Medicare funding will be, and be financially responsible. And there's a message on the Democratic side, like you mentioned, of we need to spend and make investments to achieve certain things. And then traditionally you hear from the Republican side about fiscal conservative and fiscal responsibility. For voters in Michigan who may be younger, may be searching for something in a more independent light, what is the Republican messaging when we want more financial responsibility? And at least at the national level, we see, okay, taxes maybe, revenues coming down, spending is not being cut as much, and the deficit is growing, but we're still looking for more financial responsibility. How do you message that? And obviously in the state of Michigan, we need a balanced budget constitutionally, but I think the national narrative also affects our voting decision on, I want to vote Republican, but maybe it's not actually financially responsible. Same thing with the Democrats. So where does that leave the group of people looking for that financial responsibility in government?
I would say that with the polling I have seen is the numbers among the youth are the biggest trend towards the Republicans. And it makes sense. The biggest trend for the Democrats, their biggest block, is the baby boomers. Why? Because the baby boomers were in the gigantic stock market run-up, the home value run-up. The young people can't even buy a home. What they're going to get is they're going to get a massive, massive debt. The baby boomers are benefiting from the $2 trillion in borrowing every year. So it's like the kid with the whiskey and the credit card living high on the credit card. That's what the baby boomers are doing. And these younger generations go, we're going to get the bill. That's why I think that they're transitioning to the Republican Party. They're like, we can't continue to spend trillions and trillions of dollars. And I know from our perspective here in the state of Michigan, the Democrat budget they said it was $1 billion. Oh, it's only $533 million over budget. You can't even do that constitutionally. You have to have a balanced budget. So we're going to balance the budget here in Michigan and try to reduce the cost of the budget. And at the national level, we've got to do that. We've got to reverse this spending, or the youth are going to be absolutely crushed with debt.
Real quick,
Final word,
I'll be very, very quick. So a couple things. At the federal level, one of the things that's really frustrating to me is that our state budget grows, our federal budget grows under Republicans and Democrats. Republicans talk a big game about always saying we want smaller government, but for some reason government continues to grow into Republicans as well. Somehow Republicans have to start taking some intellectual honesty and saying, all right, if we're going to grow the government, we need to start being honest about it and say that. But if we're saying that we're going to shrink the government, we need to adhere to that. That's my belief. I tend to believe we should be the one shrinking the government and addressing the federal debt. And then, lastly, what I'll say is our state government has grown by $30 billion since Governor Snyder's last budget, when you include road funding. $30 billion. That's crazy. $30 billion in 7 years. And so we just have to really think about what do we want for our future, and can we sustain that? I would suggest that the answer to that question is no. We can't sustain that growth.
Okay. Representative Brian Postumus, Senator Jim Runstad, thank you very much for joining us on this panel today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you all for attending.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you too.